I don't look it, but I used to be the national squash champion. And in 1967, I came to Australia to play in the World Championship. I played all the Australian greats, Ken Hisco, Jeff Hunt, Nan Caro. And I'm going to talk to you about my other life now. I went to a very, very snobbish education. And I was all set to be a diplomat or a doctor or a teacher, or one of you. And then I went to a famine in Bihar, where I saw death and starvation and hunger for the first time. And it changed my life. And I came back home, and I told my mother, who had got my life all laid out for me, and I said, I want to live and work in a village. She went into a coma. She said, what is this? You know, everything is laid out for you, and all of a sudden you want to do something strange. What do you want to do in your life? What do you want to do in a village in any case? I said, I want to be an unskilled laborer digging wells. Didn't go down well at all. And she didn't speak to me for many years because she thought I'd let my family down. And but, you know, when you're young and you're challenging and you're gutsy and you want to do something to change the world, you go ahead and start digging wells for 5 years. And that was when I was exposed to the most extraordinary knowledge and skills that very poor people have. Knowledge, skills, and wisdom that you don't hear about it or read about it in university. You have to feel it, you have to be there, you have to actually be with them and find out these knowledge and skills which are just never brought into mainstream. So I thought I'd start a college only for the poor. And it's the only college in the world which has some distinctive characteristics, which I shall share with you now. I went to this village for the first time, and the elders came to me and said, are you running from the police? I said, no, I'm not. You failed in your exam? I said, no. You didn't get a government job? I said, no. What are you doing here? You came to the best school and college in India, and now you want to dig wells in this. Is there something wrong? Is there something you're not telling me? I said, no, this is what I want to do. I want to really live with you, do some work with you, learn from you. So my real education started when I started the Barefoot College in 1970, long ago. And we redefined professionalism. Who is a professional today? A professional is someone who has a combination of competence, confidence, and belief. A water diviner, for me, is a professional. A traditional midwife is a professional. A traditional bone setter who sets bones in villages is a professional. People who are highly respected, incidentally doesn't know how to read and write, but enormously respected, and they are all over the world, including India. So these professionals are the ones we invite into the college. It is 500 miles southwest of Delhi. It's in the middle of a desert, 45 degrees centigrade in summer. Sometimes it does not rain for 5 years, so we respect water. But it is a place where about 2,000 people live. I like this quotation today. The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, or relearn. Mark Twain said, never let school interfere with your education. School is where you learn how to read and write. Education is where you learn from your family, from your environment, and from your community. The Barefoot College believes that it's the education that you get from your family, community, and environment that is more important than learning how to read and write. So when we said that, they said, show us what you're actually talking about. So the Barefoot College was built in 1986 by someone who still can't read and write today. He is the first barefoot architect. He drew the drawings on the sand and made this college for me at $1.50 a square foot. Today, That's what the college looks like. It has various services. One is a community radio station, which works off solar. And these are all 50,000 people we reach every 24 hours with programs on social programs, on educational programs, on something which are relevant for the quality of life. It's the only college which has already optical fiber cable. We have video conferencing from that college. We have a library of 40,000 books. We have a speed post service, a courier service. So should you happen to buy some Thilonia handicrafts, which we sell, within 7 days it'll reach Australia from that little post office there. And we also encourage physically challenged people to come. We emphasize on people who are physically challenged and who are women to come and be a part of the Barefoot College staff full-time. And they are trained in all sorts of specialized services. And the best part is they don't go because they know nowhere else to go, and no one treats them with so much respect as we do. We have women who are dentists who don't know how to read and write. Look after the children, look after the teeth of 7,000 children who go to our night schools. Illiterate. 60% of the children in India don't go to school in the morning because they look after goats and sheep and cattle. So we started the night schools of Thilonia in 1975. Over 75,000 children have gone through the schools at night. The best part is when we started it, it was with kerosene lamps, and now they're all with solar lanterns. Quality of life have improved. We have over 225 schools, and 7,000 children go to these schools at night. And we teach them more about their village rather than about their country. We tell them to respect their indigenous institutions rather than talk about what is happening in the country outside. We want them to respect what is inside the country, because lots of people feel that if you're in a village, you are in a place where they think you as inferior, and I think we have to be able to develop that self-respect and dignity among villages all over the world. So, all the 7,000 children between 6 and 14 have an election, and we vote in a children's parliament and a prime minister. The prime minister today is 12 years old. She looks after 20 goats in the morning, but she's prime minister in the evening. She has a cabinet, Minister for Education, Minister for Health, Minister for Energy, and all of them sit every month and decide how to manage, supervise, administer their own schools. 6 years ago, she went to get the World's Children's Prize from the Queen of Sweden. That's the Queen of Sweden there. And the Prime Minister's on her left. And the Queen of Sweden couldn't believe how much confidence this girl had. 12 years old, never been outside her village, never been outside India, and all of a sudden she shows so much guts and confidence, and the Queen is absolutely flabbergasted. She turned to me and said, "Please ask this girl, where did she get her confidence from?" The girl looked at the Queen straight in the eye and said, "Please tell her I'm the Prime Minister." Where the percentage of illiteracy is very high, and there's no radio, and there's no printed word, there's no television, we use puppetry. Puppets is the way we communicate with the people. Very powerful media, interactive media. You can stop the puppet show in the middle and ask a question, and the puppet should be able to reply. This puppet is 300 years old, and his name is Joachim Chacha. He knows the gossip in the village. He is my psychoanalyst, he's my doctor, he's my teacher, he's my donor, he's my lawyer. Solves all my problems for me. This puppet is legendary in the place we go to. Whenever there are problems with attendance of the school going down, Joachim Chacha is invited to come and solve my problems. And all these puppets, over 100,000 people see it every year, puppets, and we talk about social issues, how you should go for safe drinking water, why you should not beat your wife, why you should send your child to school. All these are issues which the puppet actually interacts with the community at large. These puppets are made out of recycled World Bank reports. Over 100,000 people actually watch every year. If you should happen to come to the Barefoot College, you'll be given solar cooked food. This solar cooker is actually fabricated by grandmothers who can't read and write. Very sophisticated. You get 60 meals twice a day, all made by women who can't read and write. This is a clock which turns the solar cooker with the sun. You know, they're almost half German because they're so precise. You will never have Indian women so precise making these solar cookers. It's the only college in India which is fully solar energized. All the power comes from the sun. But the person who's our master teacher has only been through 8 years of primary schooling. He knows more about solar than anyone I know in the world. He is a priest in a nearby temple, and he has solar electrified the whole campus for me. 45, now it's 100 kilowatts of panels on the roof. For the next 25 years, so long as the sun shines, I have no problems with power. It's got 5 different power plants so that they're not, so if one should go out of action, all the others for work, and it's all been designed by him. What's the most powerful way of communication today? Television? No. Telegraph? No. Telephone? No. Stellar woman. So we felt that the first woman engineer should be trained in Thilonia. This Kamala is our first barefoot woman engineer. She doesn't know how to read and write, but she is a solar engineer. So we have trained over 100 women from 13 states of India to be solar engineers. And they all come from different states which are backward, which have no electricity, and we train them to be solar engineers. I went to Dharamsala and I spoke to His Holiness. I said, His Holiness, I would like to train some Tibetan as solar engineers. He said, not possible. Tibetan women? Impossible. So I said, can I try? He said, yes, yes, please try. I'd be delighted. So these 2 women were Tibetans, went, and I called these 2 women to His Holiness, and His Holiness wanted to speak to them. These women were looking down because, of course, they're God for him. And they wouldn't look up. And the Holiness said, do you want to be a solar engineer? Said, no, no, no. You know, just mumbling away. It was too much for them to be so close to His Holiness, you know. So His Holiness turns up to me and says, they may not become good engineers. 6 months later, His Holiness had this big, huge meeting in Delhi, and there were over 1,000 people there. And all of a sudden, he looks at his watch and says, I have a very important meeting. So everyone said, oh, who? Prime Minister, Sonia Gandhi, maybe, God knows what. So he turns around the corner, and he comes and meets these 2 solar engineers. These 2 solar engineers go straight up to him and says, you know, this is a charge controller. This is an inverter, and this is a lamp. His Holiness was absolutely delighted. He couldn't understand what we had done in 6 months to these women from Tibet. They are now the first 2 solar engineers of Tibet. That is Ladakh. We went up to Ladakh, and we solar electrified over 50 villages in Ladakh and Kashmir. And we went to this woman and said, what has been the benefit of solar engineering to you? minus 40 outside. And she turns to us and says, it's the first time I can see my husband's face in winter. Can you imagine? For 6 months at minus 40, only with a candle. Can you imagine the quality of life that has improved just because of solar light? So with this technology, demystified, decentralized, we went to Africa. And in Africa, between 2004 and 2012, we have actually covered the whole continent of Africa. This is the light that they use, unacceptable today. It's called by many names, but this is the light that they have all over Africa, this lamp. And they spend over $5 to $10 a month just to look for this light. So we thought, why don't we train women from these countries? So what is the Barefoot approach? You call the whole community together. Ask them to decide how much they're prepared to pay for solar lighting if it should come. What they're already paying for kerosene, candles, torch batteries, and diesel, are you prepared to pay? And they say, yes, we'll be delighted. So they have agreed to pay $5 to $10 a month. They have a committee, and each house is entitled to have one panel, one battery, and 3 lights, and will give you 7 years of light every day for 5 years. And then they form this committee and collect the money, and so that the money is with them, and they don't feel it's gone to some other company or some NGO, so they keep it with them, and they are very happy that they're willing to pay that much because that money stays with the committee. And then they select an illiterate, rural grandmother who has never left her village in her life. That is the criteria of selecting the woman in Africa, indeed all over the world. This woman, gutsy, never left her village in her life, travels for something between 10 to 19 hours on a plane she's never been on. She arrives in a country she's never seen. She can't speak her language for 6 months. Strange food, strange language, strange weather, and there you are, 40 other grandmothers from 10 different countries round, all speaking to each other but not understanding a word because they're speaking Jola or speaking French or speaking Spanish or speaking Wolof. But the body language is great. The communication language is great. And within 6 months, they become a large family. And they all have this feeling of solidarity that they're not alone. They're all learning how to make charge controllers and inverters. Something so sophisticated, if you ask a solar engineer anywhere in the world, how long would it take you to make that charge controller? And he says 5 years at least. It's very sophisticated. If I say as a grandmother from Zanzibar is making this like that, they can't believe it. They say it's impossible. You mean to say my whole education has been a failure? I said, no. You are being trained to be an engineer in an organized, structured setup. But what do you do when you have a village which has no lights? You have to have desperate solutions, and one very important desperate solution is to train a grandmother to become a solar engineer. While they're there for 6 months in India, they learn how to make mosquito nets. They learn how to make sanitary pad units. This is from Fiji. And they all become entrepreneurs. They're not only solar engineers, but they're also trainers, and they train other grandmothers. One lesson we learned is that men are untrainable. Men are restless, men are compulsively mobile, and all want a certificate. And the moment you give a man a certificate in a village, he leaves within 24 hours looking for a job in a city. So who have you got left? Grandmothers. And these are the ones who are willing to train others. Wherever we've gone back after they've solar electrified the village, they've all said that we've trained others to take our place. They make sanitary pad units, they fabricate solar lanterns, and they go back as solar engineers and solar electrify. This is from Peru and Chile. Now I'm going to show you a small film. This is the first village ever to be solar electrified by grandmothers from Afghanistan. And these women were trained in 2007. They've trained 27 more women in Afghanistan on their own, without the Barefoot College, and solar electrified 100 villages. This is a true story about ordinary heroes. This is about very simple rural women in Africa. From the Congo to Senegal, from Mauritania to Mozambique, from Liberia to Tanzania, from Sudan to South Africa, a quiet revolution is taking place. Illiterate and semi-literate rural grandmothers who have never left their villages in their lives are proving the impossible is possible. By the hands-on approach, they are baffling high-powered engineers, universities, donors, development planners, and paper-qualified experts by demonstrating incredible sophisticated technology skills and exposing the fundamental weaknesses of the formal educational system. Without using the written or spoken word, they have come to India to be trained in 6 months to be solar engineers. Unlike the university and other based training centers that are all theory and no practice, it is not surprising these women know more about practical installation, fabrication, repair and maintenance than any paper-qualified, certified solar engineer after 5 years. These women represent the profile of everyday rural Africa, from poor agricultural communities, housewives, daily wage laborers, midwives, shopkeepers, all now recognized and respected leaders in their own communities. They have no knowledge of theory, of mathematics, physics, or electronics. They have no idea of the names of any spare parts and have never heard of generating power from the sun. But in 6 months, using only sign language, they can install a solar unit on the roof and fabricate a solar lantern and shame any paper-qualified solar engineer into silence. What is extraordinary is that they have solar electrified each house in their villages, all on their own. As a result of 12 women being trained in India as solar engineers in 2011, the President of Sierra Leone has constructed the first barefoot training center in Contaline in Africa. It was inaugurated in March 2012. 12 barefoot women solar engineers trained in India are now training 150 solar grandmothers from all over the country. When the 6 simple, rural, illiterate solar grandmothers returned to Burkina Faso, they were received as heroes. 4 cabinet ministers, the UNDP resident representative, and the entire national press were there at the airport. The Prime Minister received them. The barefoot approach believes the management, control, and ownership of the technology must lie in the hands of the poor communities. They must take all major decisions, like how much they are prepared to pay as a monthly contribution, and who among the poorest of the poor women should go for training as a barefoot solar engineer. When the target is the poorest of the poor, earning less than 50 cents a day, it is unreal and practical to talk about business models. The partnership model is by far the most sustainable model. Poor communities in all these countries in Africa have agreed to pay what they now pay for kerosene, wood, candles, torch batteries, and diesel. Depending on the economic status, they have agreed to pay between $5 to $10 a month per solar unit, even in the least developed countries. This is a fundamental breakthrough because nothing should be free. The barefoot approach does not believe in issuing certificates or diplomas after training. The certification should be done by the community themselves. That is why we believe men are untrainable. They are restless, ambitious, compulsively mobile, and they all want a certificate so that they can leave their villages looking for a job in the city. None of the nearly 246 illiterate grandmothers trained as solar engineers who have solar electrified a total of 13,200 houses from nearly 32 countries all over Africa have left their villages. So what are the universal lessons we have learned from training poor, illiterate rural women as solar engineers in Africa? Lesson 1. Any illiterate rural grandmother from any part of Africa can be trained in 6 months in India to be a confident and competent barefoot solar engineer.
Yes, me, I feel proud because solar engineer is good to lady. Now I'm feeling good because I'm original training in the solar engineer.
Lesson 2. Sensitize the community first by involving them in taking all major decisions and only then bring in the solar technology to the village, a genuine community-based bottom-up approach. Lesson 3. Keep all urban-based paper-qualified engineers away. They have neither the vision nor the courage nor the faith to select and train women as solar engineers. They also do not have the communication tools to speak as equals with poor communities. Lesson 4. No certificates should be issued. None of the grandmothers from any country in Africa have asked for them. Solar electrifying each house in the village is certification enough. Lesson 5. To reach the very poor, only a bottom-up partnership model can work. The top-down business model for the very poor in Africa has failed. The cost of solar electrifying villages by nearly 246 women solar engineers all over Africa is close to $3.9 million, less than the amount being wasted on 2 millennium villages, on brick and mortar, on salaries and consultancies, on travel, on publicity and preparing studies and papers. The solar grandmothers as of today have solar electrified 13,200 houses in 195 villages. They are the only solar engineers trained in Africa. The first, technically and financially, self-sufficient solar electrified villages in the whole continent of Africa, indeed, the world. On a rare visit to the Barefoot College, when he also spent the night, His Holiness the Dalai Lama blessed the women solar engineers on the 13th of February 2011.
That's secret. So those illiterate villagers, even grandmother, you see, physically also a little bit old and illiterate. Yet, see, through training, you see, engineer, proud, self-confidence and dignity. Wonderful.
By 2013, the Indian government has brought rural women from Sudan and southern Sudan, from Liberia, Senegal, Zimbabwe, Ivory Coast, Togo, Comoros, Madagascar, and Zanzibar. Almost all the least developed countries in the whole continent of Africa will be covered, saving 2 million liters of kerosene from polluting the environment and thousands of tons of wood from being cut, depleting the already fragile forest. There is no question. The barefoot approach is here to stay. What Mahatma Gandhi said comes to mind. First they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win. The UN has identified 47 of the least developed countries around the world. We are in 34. We've got another 13 to go. We've trained 20 grandmothers from the Pacific, from the Solomon Islands, from Samoa, from Vanuatu, from Kiribati, all charged up. They're the only solar engineers of the Pacific, these grandmothers. This is done in Peru. So, we have a great fan in Michelle Bachelet, hopefully the next president of Chile. She couldn't believe of these grandmothers and she went and saw them in Delhi. We had His Holiness, as you know, the Dalai Lama came to Telonia and spent the night with us. He went round and said something extraordinary. He said, now that you've shown the Barefoot College working in practice, let's see if the experts and the professors can make it work in theory. I'll end with a couplet from Upanishads. I am rich and well born. Who else is equal to me? I will sacrifice, I will give. In that I shall rejoice. Thank you.